Hey, math teacher bestie. Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Math Teacher Podcast. I'm Kristen Moore, and today we're diving into one of the most crucial aspects of teaching, and that is building a positive classroom culture. And I'm going to teach you guys all about my favorite way to do that, and that is the social contract. So, this episode is all about the foundational steps to establish a supportive, respectful, and collaborative environment where your students can thrive. From setting clear expectations to co creating norms, we'll cover the essentials for classroom management and the steps to ensure your students feel they're invested in a strong learning community. Let's dive in. To get started, I want to talk to you guys about the essentials of effective classroom management or effective behavioral management. Okay. So it's vital to create a classroom environment where your students know the boundaries, feel respected, and are motivated to participate. And I do that with a 3-step approach. Step one is to set and share your non negotiables. These are the things that you as a teacher will not give into. These are your non negotiables. Step two is to co create your classroom norms with your students, giving them some ownership and autonomy. And step three is to keep them alive all throughout the school year. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So let's go look at number one, set and share your non negotiables. On day one, you as the teacher need to clearly state your non negotiables. These are the essential rules that you are not willing to compromise on. Remember, we want to keep this list short and to the point. If you overwhelm your students with too many rules, you risk coming across as authoritarian. They're not going to remember them, and they might see you as a control freak, right? So think of these as the foundation of your classroom culture. I have 3 non negotiables in my classroom, and they all focus on keeping my students safe. Okay. Safety is a big priority for me. So this helps us stay safe physically, mentally, and emotionally. Okay. And my 3 non negotiables are: one, no food. I have allergies that are touch, airborne, and ingested to 11 different things. I am not going to read through every single label a student brings me to say, yes, I am allergic to that, or no, I'm not. The rule is plain and simple: no food. This covers my safety and the safety of all my students in my classroom who also have food allergies. Okay. Number 2, no phones. This is for everyone's mental and emotional health and safety. You don't need to be on your phone in class. You don't need that constant buzzing sound that just draws your attention away. I've been listening to The Anxious Generation. It's fantastic with so much research about the harm that phones can do to students. So for the 80 minutes there with me, there are no phones, no food, no phones, no hate speech. I don't have time for that in my classroom. Everyone is welcome in my classroom. Everyone is a mathematician. We're all here to learn and grow together. There's absolutely no hate speech. You are not going to make another student feel unsafe in my classroom. Period. End of discussion. Those are my 3 non negotiables: no food, no phones, no hate speech. Okay. So that lays down that essential law in my classroom. And from there, we can then go on to co create the rest of the classroom experience that we see fit for that year. So, once you have laid down those basics, I want you to invite your students to co create the rest of your classroom norms. This process is going to be really critical for promoting ownership, autonomy, and increasing buy in your classroom. When your students feel that they have a voice in the rules and a say in how the classroom is going to be, they're much more likely to adhere to them, and they're going to encourage their peers to do the same because they know if they don't, it could go back to an authoritarian model like that. Okay. And we are going to talk about how to co create these norms in just a minute. But rule 3 is keep them alive. So you cannot just let these norms become words on the wall. You've got to reference them regularly. You've got to integrate them into your classroom routines, and you have to model them and their behavior. Praise students for doing that behavior. Catch them being good. Help them to see and give them positive reinforcement with it. Okay. That consistency is going to help those norms stay alive and relevant, making them a living part of your classroom culture, creating that classroom where you and your students feel safe, comfortable, confident. You're more open to risk taking, all of these things. We are trying to build that positive classroom culture here. Now, Building on this idea of co-creating these norms and creating this positive classroom culture, we want to talk about my favorite method for doing so, which is a social contract or a class contract. A social contract is a really powerful tool for establishing a shared sense of responsibility and respect in your classroom. Now, if you don't know, a social contract is a set of agreements that are made by the entire class about how they want to treat each other, their teacher, and the learning environment. This process involves everyone, all the stakeholders, giving each student a voice and ensuring that they have felt, felt, felt heard and respected. Okay. Now, one of the absolute best resources for learning all about this is how I learned about it through Capturing Kids' Hearts. It's an incredible program that teaches you how to lead students in creating a contract that fosters a sense of belonging and mutual respect. It has been a complete game changer in my classroom, helping to build that positive atmosphere where students feel safe to take risks and engage in fully into their learning, right? And I know you're listening to this podcast because you don't do things traditionally. You want your students to be fully present, fully engaged, and feeling safe to take those risks. So I will leave a link here to the Capturing Kids' Hearts website where you can learn more about it. Okay. If you've been looking to implement a social contract in your classroom and you've already got your interest piqued on this, like how can my students co create norms with me? What is that going to look like? Am I really just relinquishing all control? Fear not, my friend, I have got you covered. You can go grab my social contract activity and bulletin board from TPT. It is one of my most popular resources outside of all my projects. And it is a great resource to guide you through the process and make it a fun, collaborative experience for your students. Shoot, you could even combine this with all the other practices you want to do. You want to practice getting your students up at whiteboards? Have them go create it up at the whiteboards. You want to do random grouping? Just split them up into random groups and have them work through this activity. This social contract is created by you and your students. It's how they want to be treated by you, how they want to treat each other, how they want you to treat them, all of these expectations, and what to do if we aren't treating someone that way. Capturing Kids' Hearts goes way more in depth with this and teaches you really cool things about hand signals and how students are going to keep one another in check. You've definitely got to give that website a look if you're interested in doing a deep dive into this. But if you're ready for just the basics, you can absolutely just go over to TPT. I have a lesson all about how to use a social contract. It's got an activity for your students to do, and it's got some cutouts so you can make your social contract bulletin board to be alive in your classroom. All right. Now, because we're creating these norms, let's talk about like why. Why are we doing this, right? We want to talk about and figure out why are norms important in sustaining a positive classroom culture. Norms are not rules necessarily. They're about setting the tone for how your classroom operates day in and day out, right? We've already set our three non-negotiable rules. That's it. Those are the rules in the classroom. Now these are the norms. These are how we're all going to maintain and be and actively participate in the classroom. So when our norms are clear and consistently enforced, they create a predictable and stable learning environment. Students know what to expect and what is expected from them, which again is going to reduce that anxiety and increases their focus on learning. Norms are also really helpful for building trust and respect among students. When everyone agrees to follow those same guidelines, it fosters a sense of fairness and equity that students don't see everywhere else in their lives, right? This in turn is going to encourage our students to support one another and work together more effectively, which is great because you have a collaborative learning classroom. Now, over time, these norms become the backbone of your classroom culture. Again, they're not just rules to follow, they're the values that guide your students' behavior and their interactions. This makes your classroom a place where your students feel that learning is prioritized and students feel empowered to succeed. So, if you are looking to cultivate a community in your math class and build that positive math classroom culture, I strongly encourage you to create a social contract. Again, remember, building a positive classroom culture is going to be an ongoing process. It is never too soon or too late to start this process. By setting your non negotiables, co creating your norms with your students, and integrating your social contract, all throughout the school year, you can foster a sense of community and responsibility with your students. Those three things are going to help you create a classroom where your students feel safe, respected, and ready to learn. Now, I have shared how I build my classroom culture. I want to know, what do you do in your class? What are your go to strategies for building and maintaining this classroom culture, especially during these first few weeks of school? Make sure that you share your thoughts in the Modern Math Teachers Facebook group or drop a comment below. All right, you guys, that is it for this episode here. I hope that you go out, keep on encouraging your students and building those strong classroom communities that I know you're capable of. And until next time, everyone, keep it real.